Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this week's Expert Systems in Florida's University session. I hope most of you have been able to participate some of the previous sessions. It's been very enlightening for me, I know. My name is Carol Ann Dykeslug. I'm with the University of Central Florida in the Office of Partnerships and Innovation, where I am one of the directors of our innovation districts, as well as our business incubation program. So I'm very involved in the economic development activities and helping foster partnerships with UCF as well as other universities. Therefore, I understand from a user perspective how critically valuable and important expertise systems are in being able to identify all the great things going on in our universities in Florida. So this morning we have three very experienced individuals from three of our universities to share with you what they have learned and the expertise systems they have been a part of helping create and how they've gone about making that happen in the institutions where they are. Just a couple of logistical reminders. I know we're all pretty used to this environment now, but please do remember to keep yourself on mute. We will get to the point in this session where we will entertain questions for you to ask the presenters directly. If you would open up your chat box, if you have questions at any time, please drop them in there. I'll be monitoring the chat, and if there is a question that's particularly relevant to what one of our speakers has to share after they finish their initial remarks, then we'll ask that. Otherwise, we'll wait until we have had all of them present, and then we'll open the rest of the session up for Q&A. But don't want you to forget those questions or comments that you have. So go ahead and put them in the chat box so everybody can see them. And I do suggest that you put your display in speaker mode rather than gallery mode if you haven't already, so you can focus on the speaker, and they all three do have a few slides to share with you as well. So with that, I'm going to introduce our first expert to talk about expertise systems at Florida Atlantic University, and that is Dr. Karen Scarpinato. She is a Senior Associate Vice President for Research at FAU, where she oversees the Division of Research, which of course is the whole research complex across the university. It's been a key objective for Dr. Scarpinato to foster research collaborations with external partners as well as within the university. She was a founding member of the Florida Research Development Alliance, which is a network of research administrators across the state focused on improving collaborations between the universities as well as sharing best practices. Before she was at FAU, she was a little further south at University of Miami as assistant provost for research. She's been an adjunct faculty and associate dean for research at Georgia Southern University, an associate professor at Wake Forest University Health Sciences, and did her postdoc at the National Institutes for Environmental Health and Safety. Karen, welcome this morning. We look forward to hearing what you have to share with us about creating a compelling case for expertise systems.
Thank you, Carol. And I do have a few slides to go over, so I'm going to try and share those with you. So good morning, everybody. So today we're going to talk about a compelling case for an expertise network. And during my career that Carol Ann so nicely reviewed for you, I worked with several commercial products that are expertise databases. And in experiencing those commercial entities, the problem that always occurred was twofold. One was the completeness of the data that were presented, and the other one was to get anybody to use the system. You know, we're in our office primarily are working with faculty, also some with students, but mostly with faculty. And for faculty to do something extra that they don't, you know, adds to their work and gets them away from what they really want to focus on, which is their science, was not that easy. And then we had a lot of complaints with many of these commercial products on the completeness, where some publications were missed, grants were missed, collaborations weren't exactly the way they were. So when I came to Florida Atlantic University, the university was set up to become a high research university. Our new president had indicated that. So there was a lot of need for collaborations, desire to move more towards the team-based funding opportunities. And you see that on the slide here. I don't know if you can see my pointer. And then also to increase our collaborations to external partners, and we're continue pursuing that. And then also, you know, being coming from a background where research was not necessarily high priority in the beginning, we have some faculty here that haven't done recently research, so finding collaborators to get them back into research was imminent as well. What we did when I came, we looked at, again, at a number of commercial entities, you know, to see if they could support those kind of needs. And what we found is many of them are, and I think that's on my next slide. You know, their products are limited. They primarily sit there, they wait to be used. It's a lot of it is top down. You know, you have your expertise in there and they're waiting for somebody to come in and search, basically. And faculty are not necessarily going into these expertise databases in our experience, and we did some fact finding on that. They're more interested in the projects that the faculty are doing rather than keywords on, you know, what anybody's expertise would be. If I would put myself in an expertise in my background is molecular biology and cancer, that doesn't tell you at all what I'm actually working on. And then I mentioned already, maintaining updated information was critical, very challenging, very much contentious, and then to really have the complete information there and what kind of databases you use actually to populate your expertise database. So with that dilemma and those challenges, you know, this kind of top-down approach, we decided to go a different route. We created our own system, which is called Meet Sparks, and it's part of a larger entity called Team Sparks, because we have two modules in that now. Meet Sparks is a platform that is project-based, and what you see here is they are grouped into different categories, if you like. So you see computer engineering, science, sensors. You can, as an individual, submit projects in there, and these projects are being tagged, and you see that here, with whatever tags you give them. These tags are going across. So if anybody comes in and in my case would tag themselves with cancer, I would get an alert, oh, there's somebody else with cancer. Or if there's a new funding opportunity that's being submitted with cancer, I'm getting an alert that there's a new funding opportunity for me. You can use these buttons on the right side here to say, oh, I like this project, I want to collaborate with you, or I want to just talk with the author of the abstract that's being submitted here. So this is our way of trying to forge collaborations. Now in the back end, of course, we do have an expertise database behind this as well. So everybody does have a profile on here, which are the users. You can click on this and you see a CV of some types, but this is self-driven. We kind of force our users to submit their CV and fill out that profile before they can use this platform. And that has worked pretty well in terms of keeping it sort of up to date. So what we found is what is the advantages here is, and I mentioned that using the platform still is of course a challenge. That will always be, I think, a challenge. And that was my biggest concern when we developed this platform. The tags seem to help. As I mentioned, the tags connect you with other projects that in the same field. They connect you to funding opportunities, to other users that have the same kind of interest, and that seems to help. And what really launched it here at FAU, I should say, is finding a champion, if you like. We even though this was originally meant for faculty collaborations, it turned out that it can be a very useful for faculty-student collaboration. Students in particular are very shy in terms of finding a faculty to work on research with. They also often don't really know what a project would look like that they could work on with a faculty member. So here they can browse their research projects basically, and then decide they want to contact a faculty member. So our undergraduate research office is actually using this actively, and that's why I'm calling them our champions, because that automatically gets the faculty to use this platform. we are discussing now also to create an incentive program around it. So if you're having an internal pilot program or something like that, to require the use of the platform. And then of course, advertise. We have our own research communication team here that's actually behind this platform, and they help us with advertising. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to our next speaker.
Thank you so much, Karen. I need to remember to unmute myself times. Next, we're going to move to Dr. Mike Conlon from the University of Florida. Dr. Conlon is a faculty emeritus member at University of Florida and serves as the project director for VIVO, which he will be talking to you about. He previously was co-director of the University of Florida Clinical and Translational Science Institute and director of biomedical informatics in the UF College of Medicine, and his responsibilities included expansion and integration of research, clinical resources, strategic planning for translational research, and as we all know, translational research involves a lot of collaboration and interdisciplinary work and partnerships. Previously, he was PI of the VIVO project, leading a team of 180 investigators at 7 schools in the development, implementation, and advancement of VIVO. It's been a CIO, University of Florida Health Information or Health Science Center, and certainly teaching, research, great depth of experience, both on the faculty side and understanding the need for this expertise system. So, Dr. Conlon.
Okay, thank you, Carol. I'm going to be focusing on the constituents and advocates for expert systems at your universities. And just wanted to start with one of our alums. This is our George Ellison. This is our first African-American graduate. He graduated from the University Law School in 1962. He said, "I'm a native Floridian, and I felt that someone had to integrate the University of Florida. And I think in this day and age, we need to all remember where our universities came from. We're still working on it. We have experts all over our campus. Now we have these beautiful campuses, and somewhere on those campuses are our experts, and they can be hard to find. Because as Karen mentioned, they're pretty busy. They're working on those projects. And so we need something to help the constituents and advocates locate the experts and bring them to bear on the problems of our state and nation. So, we have to start with the faculty. So the faculty, when I think about the faculty, I'm a faculty member, but, what do I want? I want to play on a winning team, that's for sure. So I want the university to prosper, okay? And I want to prosper as the university prospers. And when I think about an expert system, I really want little or no effort. So I'm working on the project. I don't really want to be typing stuff into some expert system. That's for somebody else to do, right? But I do like the idea that the data of the university has been democratized, that somehow there is a place where we can find out the expertise of everybody. And the graduate students and the postdocs can go there and they can find out what's going on, and that's great, okay? And if I really cared, I could go in and I could find out, how many grants there are in the chemistry department. I could do that, okay? So that's good. And that there's consistent data across the university also seems good. Prospective graduate students, well, for us, that's a big deal. We're recruiting all the time. So constantly recruiting graduate students, and sometimes it's advertising, and sometimes it's marketing, and sometimes it's direct, to the graduate student. But they're looking for cross-disciplinary faculty. Everybody's interested in, the department is one thing, but they're interested in putting a team together that can help them with the research. They also want to understand the strengths of the university. They want to understand if they're in a niche, that would not be the greatest thing, for them. They want to be someplace where there's really active scholarship going on, and they can be, and they can contribute. So they're trying to find relevant people and resources across the university. Provost, friend of mine, good guy, Joe Glover, build the reputation of the university. That's what they really want to do, right? And that means attract and retain the best faculty, attract and retain the best students, and identify the leaders in teaching, research, and service. And before we had our expert finding system, we talked a lot about teaching, research, and service, but we couldn't find the faculty who actually did all three. So we want to find the faculty who do all three. So because they are the exemplars, that's what we talk about constantly. Who are those people? How do we get those people and show them off and put them in front of people to build the reputation of the university? Vice President for Research, David Norton, another really good guy. What does he want to do? It's big, it's big, and if you've been to Florida, it's what we call down the hill. So they have, it's almost like a separate campus, almost. It's adjacent, but there's people up the hill, there's people down the hill, and maybe they don't run into each other on a daily basis. And so we have to introduce people, we have to work with the tech transfer people, we have to identify investment opportunities, and we have to make introductions. And so Raphael in his keynote at the beginning was talking about the work that is actually being done at the university to identify clusters of researchers and how they might come in contact with each other. Down there in the health center, there's Larissa, a friend of mine, working in laboratory research, clinical research, public health research. Three very different kinds of work. And the people who do those kinds of work, they often don't meet each other, okay? And then of course, translate research into practice. So the people who are actually taking care of patients in the hospital, we're trying to get our best research results in front of them. So maybe the researchers know whether masks work in COVID-19, okay? Maybe they know, what are the best antibody tests, okay? We're trying to get the best information we have directly into the hands of the people who are providing the healthcare. And of course, we're interested in state, national, and international collaboration because we're trying to work with the best people in the world. Okay. We have strategists. So the expert systems serve the strategists, okay? They're doing social network analysis. They're trying to identify internal and external collaborations, okay? And trying to figure out how do we make this university better, okay? And so, that the system serves them as well. We have other constituents. We have the library. They're on the front. They're right on the front with the faculty. Okay. We have journalism and communications and our news and public affairs offices that are trying to tell the story of the university and trying to find the experts who can do the best job at doing that. And then we have an alumni association. We're trying to get the alumni involved, and we're always looking for people who can tell the story of the university. So additional constituencies and advocates for being able to identify good people around the university. We live in an amazing state. We were reminded of that on Saturday, okay? I haven't had that much fun in a long time, okay? Let's see the state move forward, okay? And take the expertise of the state and put it in contact with the people who need it. So thanks, that's my little chat.
Thank you so much, Dr. Conlon. Great overview there. Our third expert and speaker this morning is Josh Rooney. Josh is actually at University of Central Florida, so one of my colleagues, where he's Associate Director for Research Development. And Maddie, I see you're online with us this morning good as well. That's Josh's colleague over there in Research Development. He's a product of UCF. He's a graduate of the university, and he's been in the Office of Research for about 10 years, where he has been focused on research development. So he's been part of and seen a lot of change. It's given him a chance to really understand firsthand the challenges and opportunities of capturing and sharing university expertise and the importance of that in fostering the internal and external relationships we've talked about. He's been a key liaison with our libraries at UCF to develop really interesting model called the Research Lifecycle Model that is available on our library website to download, and to create STARS, which is a showcase of text archives, research, and scholarship to make information about and from UCF more accessible. And he didn't have enough to do. He's close to finishing his doctorate from UCF in text and technology. Josh?
Thank you so much. I will, I believe I'm showing my slides now. So thank you so much for including me in this conversation. The background I bring is from a technical communication perspective, a rhetorical perspective, someone who's worked in research development, and someone who's worked in text and technology and has supported researchers and units across the university, and also connected with the support units across the university, as well as been part of some different networks of colleagues. And so this is a common conversation, and I think it's a really important one. And so I'm going to try and frame this in terms of when we're building a case, how do we approach the information and make sure these things are addressed in those conversations? So to start with here, information sources. At the University of Central Florida, we don't have a central comprehensive set of expertise in one searchable system that everyone is required to use and everyone maintains. And so we have a very eclectic set of information out there. And so in the research development side of things, we encounter different pockets of information for different purposes. So we have, of course, faculty or researcher profiles where they talk about what they're doing in their terms and for the purposes of their research. And that is self-managed. That's sometimes at the university level in terms of dedicated pages on the site, but it's also often an external system like ResearchGate, where they're maintaining a separate profile somewhere else as well. So that's high resource intensive on the faculty member to make sure what they have is up to date, in addition to all of those other things that they're always keeping up to date, like their CV. There are sometimes, not everywhere, but there are sometimes a college or department or lab level website where they've dedicated information, synthesizing or breaking down research keyword information or research activity information, which is great, but it isn't something that is adopted everywhere because it's not necessarily needed everywhere, or at least perceived as needed everywhere. I'll talk more about this when we look at the challenges with this information. We also have a number of internal systems for very specific purposes. The Sponsored Research Office tracks submission information, patent information, and there are things like keywords and descriptions that are supported. We also subscribe to some external systems as a university, where we have a license to use databases that may or may not have access to some of our existing data, to curate it into somewhat of a useful platform, but it's something that doesn't keep the researchers in the loop or the colleges in the loop. And so it has some limitations in there as well. So we have these different pockets of information that is really important to have. And I think Mike did such a great job pointing out the why we need to do this, and why this is important for researchers to take time for. And so with all of this information, these are the big needs when we're looking at this. We have information overload now. And so a significant challenge with this that I'm sure many people have participated in is the question, is this information actually accurate? This CV is from a year ago. This web page, who knows how long this has been online. Web pages don't really expire. PDFs don't really expire. And so is what is listed on this thing I found using Google, because we don't have a centralized repository, actually accurate to what the researcher is interested in doing, and a good reflection of their expertise, their activities that they're doing? Is it comprehensive? So we've touched on this a little bit already, but is this reflecting the products and the scholarship and the activities that are representative of their field? And sometimes those things are very discipline specific, but is the information that you're finding a good representation of what they're doing? And is there any consistency with the way the information is presented, the terminology that's being used. There are some similar terms that I might use as somebody who works in digital humanities that someone in education may also use. They may use the same concepts, but different terms for the same thing. And it could impact our ability to collaborate, which is a big purpose for a system like this. And also, I think a very important challenge is this information even visible? So how do you find this information? Great, there's a site somewhere that has some people's information on it. Is this in the awareness circle of the people who would be on board to use this information? Are the people who are interested in this data able to find this? Is there any kind of guidance that's shared with them on that? And then if they find this information, is this actually usable in some way? They found this information. So for example, if you have a static web page that's showing a description in several paragraphs of expertise and activities, that's somewhat helpful, but not if you have to do that for 35 people, right? That's helpful for one person on a deep dive. So is the information as it exists usable in different ways? Is it searchable? Is there a way to export the information or share the information with people? So these are significant needs with information that I think a central expertise system can help to address. But with that as well, there are the big challenges. So we said here the why. I think it's been touched on very well, but I think addressing it across those avenues when you're talking about the system is so important, because why, if it's a PI or a researcher's job to do this, why do they need to spend additional time maintaining a system if it's on them to do so? Why do we need to invest money to pay for this system? Why do we need to invest time out of our busy schedules to be making sure the system is working and up to date? So the why is so important to convince buy-in, or else you're going to have a shallow buy-in, and that will significantly detract from the value of the system. And I've touched on this already, but who is maintaining this? So is this using AI with natural language processing? Are PIs in the loop to verify the information? Is it all on them? Is it students and administrators? Who is taking care of this information? Who's managing this information? As I already said, what information can be captured and what can't be captured, and you have to use as a point externally. So if, for example, someone is creating a physical artifact, it's an important part of what they're doing, or they're capturing maybe a performance, or there's a programmatic activity. Those are difficult to capture in a database. So how do you represent that information in there? When is this getting updated? Is there a refresh cycle? Is this something that happens annually during a review process? Is this happening after every research activity is completed at the publication cycle? When is this getting done? Because if there isn't a refresh cycle, it goes stale very quickly. As I said, where does this live? Is this in a place where people will think to find it? And how are we going to get from where you are now to where you want to be? Because this is a complex challenge. And so if we say, we just want to figure out absolutely everything in this challenge, and then we're going to get started, that's fine as long as we have stages to get there. But if it's just everyone has to put all of their information in this set thing that I said you have to do, and then it'll just work, it'll never get off the ground like that. So if you don't have an important plan for implementing this that is justified with the why and all of these plans, then I don't think it will get off the ground. And so that's what I wanted to share with you today.
Thank you, Joshua.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, not seeing any questions in the chat yet at this point, I have a few that I'm going to pose to the three of you, and any of you that would like to take a stab at it. You've all done a great job talking about the what and the why and the systems that you've been part of, but if you don't have an expertise system at your university or your organization or institution, where do you start? Is there, from your experience, a primary focal point in the why that it's in most universities, it's going to make sense to start with when you're trying to convince your administration to give you approval to even move forward in working on this and devote some resources to it. Mike, I see you smile.
I'm going to give what we call an anti-use case here. So this is what not to do.
There you go. That works too, just as valuable. Yeah.
So we having watched our community for a decade, sometimes people get very enthusiastic and they're like, we have to have this. And they start building it before they have made the case with the administration of the university.
Yeah.
I would not suggest that.
Exactly.
You really need to find your advocates and constituents and work with them, work with your research office, work with your provost's office, work with the people for whom this might be helpful, and they might be the place where they can oversee it. Without that, it's not gonna, our experience has been, it doesn't work very well. Somebody has to be, somebody pretty far up in the university has to be a champion of this thing, and starting it out of a research group or a task force of some kind, a low level, something or other, it just doesn't seem to work. So I know it's hard to have those meetings with those people, but I think that's the approach.
Makes sense.
Sorry, Carol.
Go ahead, Carol.
I was going to say, similar to Mike, that you have to have the champion, right? But I think it also helps to have some pilot, if you want, pilot data, because leadership is very interested in return of investment. What is it I'm getting from my investment, right? So if you can show any of that, or at least show maybe from other universities, if you're purchasing a product or planning on purchasing a product, maybe you can get from other universities some feedback on what their return of investment was. If you're planning on, like we did, creating something new, it's a little trickier, right? But you need to have champions within the university who are willing to work with you on it, and you're pushing it out there and being behind it, right? I think that's the champion part, is really and the return of investment, showing to be able to show the return of investment.
That's exactly where I was going to go, Karen. There's that balance between getting some early data, like an alpha test almost, where you build what we would call minimum viable product, in the entrepreneurial world, and having something to show others. So Josh, what are your thoughts on that question?
I think absolutely you have to have top level buy-in to this, and return on investment is how you drive that conversation. And knowing what is valued in their ROI, I think having a comprehensive set of that is so important. So more research dollars, right? That is so important, but so is, driving increased scholarship or promoting collaboration that's tied to a strategic plan, a strategic initiative for the goal, but having very comprehensive set, not overreaching or over promising what it could do, but showing where the clear lines of connection are, that it is directly supporting those missions that they already have, because they've already bought into their own goals. So being aware of what those goals are is so important.
Verifying how you can support those. Help me understand how you would make the case for how you're going to track that ROI, because you have an expertise system. How do you know that an outcome was related to that? How do you keep track of that? It seems very difficult.
We don't.
Okay.
So the university is changing 100 things every week.
Right.
There's no way to track it back to the good work that is being done on the expert system. So I think we need to come to terms with that, because we get asked that question a lot. Like, can you do like a controlled study, or some kind of scientific research that's going to show the impact of the expert finder system? And my first thing is, well, you'd have to stop everything else you're doing, because you're changing the university all the time. So no, I don't think you can attribute it to the expert finder system. Sorry.
We actually have that question continuously, not just for the database or, our Meet Sparks program, but even larger for our whole research development group, because what they're doing is, it's not that easy to track, right? They are doing basically what expertise databases to some extent are supporting, is finding collaborators and then getting them to write grants. And, how do you show that a grant was successful because you worked with, because you don't have the opposite, right? You can compare it to what would have happened if that group would not have worked with you, or that group would not have had the expertise database, right? So it's a little bit circumstantial evidence, if you like. For our particular system, we've had quite a few discussions also on, what kind of metrics should we collect and could we collect? And of course, the immediate ones are fairly simple. How many users are we having from how many departments, what levels are the faculty at that are using it, and then how many connections do we get, how many collaborations are basically, at least initially, formed that we can track through that system. Now we don't know where they go with those collaborations, right? So that's an additional step in tracking. But we are trying to, or we're hoping to connect that then with grant success, for example, or other forms of scholarship, where we can basically track back, if a larger percentage of scholarship or grants was successful if they used our system versus not, that would be a measure. So those kind of measures that we would incorporate into our system.
I think something, if I could just add to that, something else that is helpful, but again, is well, I agree with what everyone has been saying here. It's very difficult to draw that straight line, and it's probably inappropriate to even do so without comparisons. But I think capturing anecdotal accounts of people who are using it and having those collected is one place to make sure that you're demonstrating that it is at least getting buy-in. That's better than analytics information, which is also helpful if you are tracking use of the tool, which sometimes is comforting to people. But being able to see, how have you used this tool? Has this tool benefited? Did this increase your confidence in some, in successful competitiveness in a grant, for example, or collaboration and scholarship, or impact, or showcasing your research, whatever the goal is in their area. But collecting those responses is another place to show the value of it indirectly.
Related to that, Brian Cooper, who's on this morning, has a question. And Mike, you mentioned the reputation of our universities as a key objective. And you mentioned news and public affairs. So to what extent do your respective media relations or communications entities use your system? And have they become champions for being able to find who's doing what within the university?
So they were one of the first people to contact us. They came right forward, and they did what they had a need that we were uncomfortable with. I'll say that. They wanted us to record evaluative data about the faculty members, because what do they want to know? They want to know who's good on television.
Yeah.
And we didn't want to store evaluative data.
Right.
Okay? But we were happy to have them use the system to find new voices for the university. And as we work on our diversity issues, we have to find these new voices. It's very easy to find the top funded researchers. That's not going to help you that much. You have to find people who can tell the story of the university in a different way. And so they have been champions in journalism and communication. So our College of Journalism and Communication, they have also worked with us. And so it's been exciting to see that kind of connection. Even
dipping down, I can see into the graduate student population, undergraduate research population doing things. That has great appeal to the role in the recruitment of students as well that you're trying to reach. Karen, what's been your experience?
Well, since we don't have an actual expertise database per se, ours is more project-based. And now our public affairs office doesn't use it quite the same way as Mike indicated. However, one of the co-founders of the system actually sits in public affairs, so it's integrated with public affairs where we are. And you mentioned the undergraduate student population, which is really one of the big ones that we are using that system for here right now, and that's certainly being used as a research tool, recruitment tool. And and also as a recruitment tool for faculty. That's not necessarily on the public affairs side, so it's more on the departmental and college sides.
Josh, maybe if you could just address a little bit about the how you've worked with the libraries in particular, because I know you have a very well integrated team at UCF between research and the libraries and some of the other departments.
Absolutely. So with the libraries, we have created partner information. So the life cycle is something I was a part of, but there are other people championing that as well. But there have been some other partnerships we've had where we've said, if a researcher is doing their work in a particular area, how will they know what's available as an infrastructure to support or leverage what they're doing to the greatest possible impact? So there are some easy cases to point to that. So the librarians are curators of so much great information and so many systems. And so they were able to identify where partners are for different needs across different areas. And that as part of UCF's makeup, because our university is very large and there's many different areas working in things that are sympathetic to one another. So what we did is we divided some of the larger goal into what we would contribute toward that goal. And so who do we know? What do we know? What do we contribute to, and when does that occur? And then we built what we shared with people based on the information that was there. We didn't decide on a design first, but said, what do we have? And then how do we convey this to people that need it when they need it? So this was something that started first as a one-off and then has essentially continued this entire time, and we continue to advance it. UCF was recently named as a Hispanic serving institution. And so now we're integrating where is the HSI office and those initiatives integrated throughout the scholarship, programmatic, and research aspects of the university. Do people know about that as well? And so the library is instrumental in making sure that's getting into our information as well.
I think we've all seen the extraordinary collaborations that the COVID pandemic has sparked, as there's just been such passion to find solutions and find answers. And we know across all of our universities that's been the case. So have your systems, how have these expertise systems helped play a role in accelerating or expediting those kind of collaborations, or have they? Is there some ROI to be found in this environment right now?
So we're actually using our system, as I mentioned, for the students. We do have entrepreneurial student programs, an entrepreneurial student program for which we already use the platform. When COVID started, we created a new student program, an entrepreneurial student program, asking in 2 tracks, the clinical track and the social sciences track, for students to submit their ideas. What can you do even if you're remote? How can we address the problems that are related to this pandemic, not just from a clinical standpoint, but also all the social aspects of it, and use the platform basically to get that out and get teams together. We're using that on a regular basis for our other entrepreneurial student program as well. So for that, since it's team building, we had a couple of larger student teams that had actually from very different disciplines that I never met ever. So they are now very successfully working together on projects, which was very nice.
Excellent. Mike, you or Josh, have you to share?
Yeah, well, I'm hosting another conference in a couple of weeks around Vivo, the system that I work with, and several of the talks are on COVID-19 formation using the Expert Finder system. talks being given by the University of California, San Francisco, and University of California, Davis. And in Florida, we also used our expert finder system to help put some people together.
And we're also using some of the framework over here to help prepare a showcase of the impactful research related to this topic that's going on in so many different areas across the university. So we've adapted some of the framework to this.
I have one more question I'm going to pose to you, and then Chris, I do see your question. I'm going to ask that at the end because it's a great transition into the rest of the series here. But there's some pretty resource intensive aspects to these expertise systems. As others that are on in the session this morning are thinking about how they might want to make a case for this in their university, what should they be aware of in terms of where the resources are really going to be most intensive, most likely, from what you've learned?
I'm sorry, where the resources?
Resource, yeah. What's going to be the most resource heavy parts of doing it? Is it people? Is it money? Is it time? Is it all the above? Is it?
Always people.
Always people. Yeah, I was going to say that. People.
Yeah.
Well, you have to remember, if you're creating something, and I'm sure Mike will agree with that, you know, you have to have someone who can consistently work on this,
Yeah.
you know, and turnover will be also detrimental as you're working on something that you're trying to build up from scratch, right?
Mm-hmm.
So people,
And I have found with any type of development of something like this, it's easy to get excited about the creation, but sometimes to forget about and be excited about the maintenance and the upkeep. So any lessons learned there?
You know, you birthed the baby, now you're the parent.
That's right, yeah. Don't forget, the long-term view, right?
That was fun and all. So, you know, the libraries have tremendous expertise around the data, okay, and data resources that would help populate this thing. But you know, Karen's point about the projects, I think we really need to understand that, because if you want to make the faculty happy, that's what they're doing. They're doing those projects, okay? And people want to be engaged in those projects. And so, what are those projects? And I worked with international partners, and you know, over here in the United States, at a research university like UF, a project is a grant. There is no separation between project and grant. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a grant, don't talk to us about your project. You know? But in Europe, it's exactly the opposite. They have funded universities. They decide what research they're going to do. They bring people together and they do it. And they don't need external funding to organize a research effort. And it's quite refreshing, actually, to work with them on these topics. But they come together naturally, and they create a project, and they do it. Okay, and in that environment, and in ours, project is the thing. And they couldn't understand what we were talking about when we talked about grants.
Interesting.
Now, the university has a grant to do something or other, and it might fund the project, but the project is the research. So, you know, the grant is a mechanism for funding the research. The project is the research. And so getting that, helping that language and thinking through that, and, you know, working with people, I think this focus on the project is right.
Right, very good.
That's the way the faculty think of it.
So I think we'll wind this session up with a question that Chris posed, Chris Barnes. For those of the three of you on the panel, where do you see this whole expertise system trend going, these types of systems? Any projections within the universities, outside the universities, and what do you think?
I would expect that we would incorporate some machine learning, AI, even though AI these days is like predictive forecasting, right? Mm-hmm. We're already doing some of that, or trying to do some of that here, you know, where you can predict which teams or formation which composition of which teams might be more successful for which grants. You know, coming back to Mike's point, yes, here in the US, it's all grants. So, you know, even if I'm talking projects, we are expecting the project to respond to grants. Yeah, so I'm very much with you on that one. That goes back to our metrics, right? The university has the metrics that is primarily focused on grant funding and research expenditures, and then all of us have those here in the States. Where I see the expertise databases go and expert databases go is really incorporating more of this the newer technologies, the machine learning, data analytics type, you know, predictive forecasting, I guess, is the best one that I can think of right now, where you can basically predict which team would be more successful for which grant, and do really the analysis, you know, who has been anecdotally been more successful in going after whatever an NSF career, you know, what factors fall into there. And then basically gear your target toward those groups at your university.
I also think that systems will continue to grow. One other thing I think that would be helpful is it will be able to have more showing of configuration of teams and networks and their impact as more scholarship is becoming publicly accessible, as more research grant data and other products are becoming publicly searchable in databases. I think this will continue to grow, and there will be a challenge for making sure that these things are matriculated into a usable way and visualized in a way that is helpful for strategy and planning.
A couple of things. I think we want to go earlier in the research process. So this formation business that you know that Karen's been talking about,
Yeah.
and Central Florida has that beautiful diagram of all the participants in the research program earlier. So we want to know who worked together to write the proposal, because that's formation of a team. That's the beginning.
Yeah.
That's where it starts. And they self-organized, often self-organized to create that proposal. So there's a new team. We want to know about that. And study it as team building and collaboration and network. So earlier in the process, we do want to do predictive analytics with machine learning and those kinds of things, and we're moving in that direction. But the teams are the thing, and identifying the teams and having data about the teams is very, very important.
Even if those proposals don't get funded, that's still a team. So not just tracking the awarded,
but those to work together because they thought it might work.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Right? No, I love that. That's great. Excellent. All right. Well, all of you join me in thanking our wonderful panelists and presenters. Thank you, Karen and Mike and Josh. And I just want to remind you, and particularly Chris, your question that you asked about where is all this going. There will be a conference in the fall, a national symposium. It'll be the second annual national symposium on expert systems. That would be a great place for you to come and learn even more about where all this is going and some of the new developments. Amy, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to participate this morning. I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Well, thank you all again. It's been a great discussion, and so happy you were able to participate. And thank you to our attendees, and hope to see you all next week for Scholars at FIU, Data Elements and Stakeholder Analysis by Brian Cooper and David at Florida International University. So see you all then. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Go home.